Hello, this will hopefully be a quick tutorial on how to get a local version of OneHourGameJam working basically, so that you can work on it and, extend it or fix any bugs or whatever. Anyway, before we start, you will need free programs installed ahead of time. The first is some sort of text editor, probably MySQL Workbench or some other program for SQL, and source tree or some other Git client. I will demonstrate obviously for these free. The fourth tool which we'll need is XAMPP, but we'll install this one together. First of all, on the XAMPP website, click Downloads and then select, well, any of these really, except if you're using a Mac, select one of the non-VM versions. Okay, once it's downloaded, begin the installation. Make sure to install it in its default directory if you're on Windows. Don't install it into program files. Once the installation is done, you can immediately start the control panel via this, but just to show you where it shows up later on, you can type in XAMPP in here and the XAMPP control panel shows up. So if anytime you launch it, you can launch it that way. In the control panel, start the Apache and MySQL services. If Apache fails, there is a known conflict between XAMPP and Skype. So close Skype on Windows anyway, and should work from that point on. Now you have a web server running. So if you type into a browser, if you type in localhost, you will get the default Apache splash screen, or if you type in phpMyAdmin, this will give you to the MySQL interface, which you can also use instead of MySQL Workbench. Anyway, next up we will clone the OneHourGameJam repository. On the OneHourGameJam repository page, click Fork. This will create a local copy of the repository in your own user space. Once done, click the clone or download button. Make sure it says clone with HTTPS. If it does not, click the use HTTPS button here and copy the URL. Next, open source tree and click the clone button, paste in the URL and select an empty folder where to clone this to. And clone. Okay, once done, you can look at the page source by opening the folder. Here is the entire page. Search for CMD, right click and run as administrator. Now in here type cd for change directory c:// or I suppose we can just copy this, can't we? So copy this here. So now we are in this folder, and we will need to we will also need the folder where the game code is hosted, or the GameJam code is hosted. So type in mklink \D and then OneHourGameJam and then the path. Oh, but normal slash. Okay, so what we've done now is in cxampp htdocs we've created a symbolic link called OneHourGameJam, which links directly to the location where the source is held. So despite these paths being different, they actually both correspond to the exact same location. Okay? This makes it so that if in a browser we type in localhost/OneHourGameJam, localhost/OneHourGameJam, we will get to the website which is hosted at this location. So for example, I deleted the new page thing. So for example, if I have a test.txt and write test in here, I can write /test.txt, and here we go. This is the same file. Anyway, once you have this, you will notice that a whole bunch of errors happened here, specifically database related errors. So to get rid of these, we'll need to also set up the database. So in MySQL Workbench, press plus here, name the database localhost, and all of these are actually perfectly fine for the default database. Press OK. So double click it to open, and then in the repository, in your local repository copy, click on the SQL folder, open the OneHourGameJam.sql folder file, and paste the entire contents into MySQL Workbench. In here, first of all, create a new schema, called it OneHourGameJam, and select the jar set to UTF-8MB4. Okay. Now double click OneHourGameJam, and now execute this. Notice everything went without a problem. And if you alright, and then let's set up the connection. So going back to the folder where the database where the code is, open the config folder, make a copy of the dbconfig.example_example file and rename it to dbconfig. Open it, set the db address to localhost, set the username to root, set the password to an empty string, and set the database name to OneHourGameJam. This will be the URL or IP address to the database where it is. If it's offsite, this will be the username and password for the database, and this will be the schema name, or this thing, if they're different. Anyway, if you refresh the page now, you can see that, barring some errors, some warnings which are bound to happen, the actual page is loading. So if we log in and we say I don't know, admin and then some password, if you log in, the first user that will be created will be a administrator, and everybody after that will be a normal user. So this is the basic setup for how to get OneHourGameJam, the website, working on your local computer. From this point on, any modifications you make can be done in your local repository. For example, if we change, I don't know, here to say welcome to my website or something, and then refresh, this will be represented on your local website. But if you want to actually get this onto OneHourGameJam.com or into the repository, you will first need to go back to source tree, click on working copy, select all the folders, all the files which you've changed, and only those, please. Select stage selected, write what the change actually was as a new welcoming header, then commit, push, yes. Okay, once this is done, go to github.com and onto your local clone of or fork of OneHourGameJam. Over here, press new pull request, select, I suppose, select the branch that you want to go into this pull request, and well, create it. So I guess adds new welcoming header. Example. Pull request. Sure. There we go. Now we're in the main OneHourGameJam repository. Once a maintainer comes by, views it, and agrees that it's good, they can click this button, and once this button is clicked, it'll be actually merged into the main repository. So I think that's everything. If you have any questions, please come to Discord. You can find the button for that on OneHourGameJam.com at the top or on the side.